It's tough to sell books in 2025 because so many people are reading little blips and little blogs and little tweets and little Facebook posts on their phone. And really, who has the time to sit down and read a book for minutes in a row? Well, the answer to that is children. Don't we all still read our kids a bedtime story from actual book with actual illustrations? I don't have any industry statistics to back it up, but my hunch is the child's book category is still strong. It's not the kind of thing that you would read from an iPad or an iPhone to a little one. And so I'm very excited to report that there is a freedom-oriented child's book that has just been published, or actually it'll be officially on shelves in 2 weeks. And it's written by someone who in their full-time job is a freedom advocate. The name of the book is Maple's Garden, a Canadian freedom of speech story. And the author is Christine Van Geyn, who is a lawyer for freedom with the Canadian Constitution Foundation. She joins me now from her podcasting studio. Christine, great to see you again, and congratulations. So the book's coming out in 2 weeks, is that right?
Yeah, I have a whole big stack of them on my porch and all over my dining room table, but it should be shipping through Amazon in about a week or two. And it's also available in bookstores like Indigo and Chapters, if that's where you prefer to buy your books.
You know, I am terrified by all new books these days because it feels like they've just been churned out by this wokeness factory. And it's not just children's book. I was at Oxford University, perhaps the most prestigious university in the world. I think it even surpasses Harvard. And the entire bookstore, at least the front of it, was a propaganda machine. If it wasn't about transgender issues, it was about climate issues. And I just thought, is there anything neutral, let alone fighting for freedom? Tell me what motivated you to write a freedom-oriented book for kids.
Yeah, so I think there is no more important time than right now to talk to our children about the importance of freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And, you know, in my work, I travel a lot, and I'll go to American historical sites, and I will exit through the gift shop, and I will see all of the amazing books that they have at these historic sites about America's constitutional history. And we're really sadly lacking that in Canada. I've actually been, you know, in working on preparing this book, I bought a few Canadian resources, something parents really want to talk to their children about, and they were either too complicated or just got basic principles wrong. For example, one of the books I was reading talked about rights which are granted to us by our government. At a fundamental level, that's really wrong. Yeah. We did not gain the right to freedom of speech because Pierre Elliott Trudeau bestowed it upon us. It's a right that we have by virtue of being a human being. Yeah. And freedom of speech, freedom of expression, I actually think it is a neutral issue. It's an issue for across the political spectrum. It's not ideological. It's a fundamental core part of Western civilization. It's very precious, but it doesn't pass itself down generation by generation. We need to teach these values to our children. And I fear that we're not doing that. And that's why I wanted to write this book.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the story, Maple's Garden. So, I mean, I'm not worried about spoiler alerts because any grown-ups watching it, they're not the primary book readers. It would be their kids. So tell me a little bit about the story. Because another thing, I suppose, is you want to write a book that's not heavy-handed, not a eat your broccoli kind of book. You want to make it still fun for the kids and for the parents to actually read it. So tell me a little bit about the story.
Yeah, so you also have to approach it in a really gentle way because freedom of expression, I mean, I wanted to base this on real Canadian case law. And I have to say, the cases that end up in court, a lot of the time, the speech at issue in free speech cases is usually something it's not something you would want to teach your children to say.
Right.
But the concept of this book is about a little girl who loves nature, and she wants to grow a garden on her own property at her own home with plants that she likes. And this has actually been an issue in a lot of cities across Canada where people will have these naturalized gardens where they'll grow things like goldenrod and milkweed. And the cities who hypocritically have their own pollinator gardens, will enforce bylaws because snoopy neighbors send meddling bureaucrats to go and raise these gardens to the ground on private property. And there are a number of cases about this. There's one called Sandy Bell and Toronto, out of Toronto. There's one called Ruck and Mississauga out of Mississauga. And the idea is Maple is expressing her views on nature and beauty on her own property the way she wants to. And we all get to decide for ourselves what we believe in and what we think is beautiful. The government doesn't get to make those choices for us. So Maple, when the mayor comes to cut down her garden, she learns about how the charter guarantees the right to freedom of expression. It protects her opinion about her plants. It protects her plants, which are an artistic form. And she goes to court and beats the mayor, and she convinces the people in her society, in her community, that they might like to have a naturalized garden too. And that's the solution to this sort of divisive world we're living in right now. Allow people to express themselves and to convince others of your point of view.
So was this actually, like those two cases you mentioned, were they actual cases where freedom of speech was referred to by the courts? Because
Yes,
it's interesting
it was.
that you're describing the choice of plants as free, I would say free expression more than free speech. But was that a charter freedom that was litigated? The freedom
It was.
to plant what I want to plant?
It was.
Really?
And yeah, it was, because the freedom of expression, which is what we have protected in Canada, includes more than just words, things that you say or things that you write. It includes art, paintings, music, dancing, and yes, gardens, if those gardens are expressing meaning. And you talk to anyone from England who, you know, they love their gardens in England, and that is a really appreciated art form in that country.
Well, North America too. It's very popular.
It is,
garden.
yes. Yes, these are artistic expressions that convey political meaning as well, about all kinds of different things that you believe.
You tell me what's your most beautiful garden you've ever seen. For me, it's the Butchart Gardens in Victoria, BC. Have you ever been there?
I have not, but my most beautiful garden, because I'm nostalgic, is the garden my mother planted that I grew up with, which is a forest, a woodland garden.
Oh, wow. Now, before we turn the camera on, I asked you about your illustrator, because when you're dealing with children's books, you really want a strong illustrator just to help the imagination help get the noggin jogging. Who is Lisa Ng? And you were starting to tell me a story about her political, scars too. Tell me about her.
Yeah, so Lisa's not political, but she certainly understands through real life experience how freedom of expression matters. So Lisa and I grew up together. We went to elementary school together and high school together. And she's a nurse, a professional nurse, as well as a professional artist. And she had her own kind of run-ins with the cancel mob when she had some artwork that she had on display at a public library that the library, some people in the community said, we don't like this art. It's too spooky and scary. So they demanded her art be taken down. But worse than that, during the 2022 Freedom Convoy, Lisa, who's a nurse, so she had a lot of views about what was happening with the pandemic firsthand. She was fascinated with what was happening with the convoy, and she said she felt compelled to paint about it. And she painted this beautiful image of the convoy with some animals, little geese in trucks and things like that. She does a lot of surrealist work, and she posted it on her social media, and the mob really came for her in the art community. And to the point she was shocked. She's not a political person. She said, why can't I explore these themes? But she was, she ended up taking down the image because of the reaction that she got, and she was afraid. She'd never really had an encounter with something like that. And art is where you need to have the freedom to explore any idea. So to me, it's just so absolutely crazy that the artistic community would say there are subjects that are off limits because, I mean, some of the most controversial things I've seen are in art galleries. And
Yeah.
the idea you couldn't paint a convoy without some mob coming for you is just shocking to me. So she, in her bones, understood the value of this project as an artist.
Wow. Well, now you make me want to find her images. You say they were taken down. That's a shame. Can they be seen anywhere? I mean, geese and truckers. That's a fun comment. I'd just like to see it.
Yeah, you know what? I'll send it to you right now so that you can see it. It is available on an interview she did about it, but she took it off her social media.
Isn't that crazy?
Let me tell you one other thing about finding an artist.
Okay.
So I wanted to work with Lisa because I've known her for a long time. But, you know, as a business, which we're a charity, we need to be cost conscious. So I looked into finding some other Canadian artists. It was really important to me to have a Canadian artist. And I emailed one to do a commission. I wanted to explain the project as well as our organization, which is a civil liberties charity. And the artist wrote back, I guess I'm okay with the idea of freedom of expression, but I'm worried. Do you support the carbon tax or are you against it? And I was shocked because I think the majority of the country at that point was opposed to the carbon tax and our prime minister was. So I did not reply to that email and the artist did not get that commission. And I was delighted to work with Lisa.
You know, there's a saying, and I don't know who said it, but I like to repeat it. It's freedom of speech is the gift you have to give your opponent if you want it for yourself. And that's really hard to do because we know what we don't like. Mm-hmm. But you've got to tolerate it because it really is, you know, what comes around goes around. And it's tough to be consistent because there's a lot of things we hate. And for that artist you just referred to say, I'm for free speech, but only if you agree with me on, and what a random thing to say, the carbon tax.
I mean, we don't even work on that issue, but I actually am against it now that you're asking.
Yeah. You know, and of course, art, almost every artist and every artistic form I can imagine depends on freedom of speech. It is the currency of that industry. If you're a factory worker, freedom of speech, you know, you care about it as a person, but it doesn't go straight to the heart of what you do for 8 hours a day in a factory. If you're a farmer, I mean, I suppose we've just been talking about expressing yourself through horticulture. But if you are an artist, by definition, the heart of what you do it's your intellectual expression. You created it in your mind and you expressed it with your hands or your mouth. And for an artist to be against free speech is shocking, but in a way completely unsurprising. The book is called Maple's Garden. It's available on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca, and Chapters Indigo. Tell me one more thing. The proceeds of this book, they actually go to a good cause, don't they?
Yeah, so the royalties from the book will be going to the CCF. It doesn't go to me. It's going to the Canadian Constitution Foundation, which is a legal charity that fights for fundamental freedoms in Canada. We were the charity that brought the legal action against the Trudeau government for their use of the Emergencies Act against the Freedom Convoy. We also have worked on many cases about naturalized gardens. So this is sort of in that vein if you are into the theme. And so the royalties from the book will help fund the work that we do at the CCF.